I was finalizing the quarterly reports when Mia knocked on my office door. "Ms. Lawson, Mr. Parker would like to see you in his office immediately." I glanced at the clock. Nearly 5 on a Friday. Did he say what it's about? Just that it's urgent and confidential. Mia's expression gave nothing away, but her formality sent warning signals. As CFO of Westridge Pharmaceuticals, unexpected meetings with the CEO rarely meant good news. I locked my computer, smoothed my skirt, and followed Mia down the executive hallway. Gerald Parker's assistant waved me directly in without announcement. Inside, Gerald stood by the window, his typically relaxed demeanor replaced with something more serious. "Allison, thank you for coming. Please sit down." I perched on the edge of the chair across from his desk. "Is everything all right, Gerald?" "That depends on your perspective." He took his seat, studying me carefully. "I've just received some concerning information regarding Mark Foster." My pulse quickened at my ex-husband's name. "Mark? What about him?" "It appears he's been approached by Nexus Biotech with a significant offer. They want him to bring his research team and their current projects." I processed this information slowly. Mark headed Westridge's most promising research division. Losing him to our primary competitor would be devastating. "I see. And you're telling me because despite your divorce, I thought you might have insight into his thinking." Gerald leaned forward. "And frankly, because you're the only person who might convince him to stay." I almost laughed. "Gerald, Mark and I haven't spoken in months. Our divorce was hardly amicable." "I'm aware." "The champagne toast he held in the research department after signing the papers was inappropriate." Heat flooded my cheeks. I hadn't known about the toast. "Then you understand I'm the last person who could influence his decision." "Perhaps, but you understand him better than anyone here. And you understand what his departure would mean for Westridge." I did indeed. Mark's gene therapy research was positioned to revolutionize treatment for several autoimmune diseases. The patents alone would be worth billions. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Gerald sighed. "I need you to meet with him. Try to understand what Nexus is offering and what it would take to keep him here." "You want me to negotiate with my ex-husband?" "I want you to protect this company's future." His expression softened, slightly. "I wouldn't ask if there were any other option." I stared out the window, considering the impossibility of what Gerald was suggesting. Mark and I had managed to avoid direct interaction since the divorce, communicating through lawyers or colleagues when absolutely necessary. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "That's all I ask." Gerald stood, signaling the end of our meeting. "Except for your discretion, of course. No one can know Nexus has approached him." I nodded, already dreading what lay ahead. As I reached the door, Gerald added, "For what it's worth, Allison, I never thought he deserved you." Back in my office, I sank into my chair, Gerald's words echoing in my mind. A champagne toast. Mark had actually celebrated our divorce with his colleagues. The humiliation stung fresh, even months later. I opened my bottom desk drawer and pulled out the company directory. Though I knew Mark's extension by heart, something about looking it up made this feel more official, less personal. My finger hovered over the phone. What would I even say? "Hello, I hear you're planning to destroy the company. Care to discuss over coffee?" Instead, I closed the directory and opened my email. Distance felt safer. "Dr. Foster, Mr. Parker has asked that we meet to discuss departmental budget allocations for next quarter. Please advise your availability Monday. A. Lawson, CFO Professional, Impersonal." Nothing to suggest Gerald's concerns or my discomfort. Mark's response arrived within minutes. "Ms. Lawson, my schedule is fully committed through Wednesday. Thursday 10th a.m. would work. M. Foster, PhD Ms. Lawson." So formal, as if we hadn't shared a bed for 8 years. a home for 10. I forwarded the exchange to Gerald with a brief note. Meeting scheduled for Thursday. Will update you afterward. His reply was immediate. Too late. Need information before board meeting Tuesday. Insist on Monday. Grinding my teeth, I crafted another email to Mark. Dr. Foster, Tuesday will be too late. This concerns time-sensitive. Budget matters requiring immediate attention. I can meet you at your convenience this weekend if Monday is impossible. A. Lawson. The response took longer this time. 20 minutes of anxious waiting before my inbox chimed. If it's truly urgent, I'll be in my lab tomorrow. 1 p.m. M just M. A small crack in the formal facade. I confirmed the time, then gathered my things to leave, my weekend plans now irreparably altered. At home, I poured a glass of wine and carried it to the balcony of my downtown apartment. The city lights blinked on as dusk settled, a view Mark had never seen. I'd purchased this place after the divorce, a fresh start 15 floors above the streets we'd once walked together. My phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte, my younger sister. Dinner still on for tomorrow? New guy I want you to meet. Lawyer, divorced, great hair. I groaned. Charlotte's post-divorce mission to find me a new husband had become relentless. Rain check, work emergency, midweek instead? Again? You're using work to avoid dating, not healthy. But fine, Wednesday. He'll wait. His hair is that good. I smiled despite myself. Charlotte meant well, even if her methods were exhausting. Sleep proved elusive that night. I tossed between sheets, too cool, too empty, rehearsing conversations, with Mark that always ended in arguments. By morning, dark circles shadowed my eyes, requiring extra concealer before I could face the day. The research building sat separate from the main Westridge campus, a gleaming structure of glass and steel, housing our most advanced projects. I'd overseen its financing 3 years ago, fighting for the additional millions in the budget that Mark had insisted were essential for proper laboratories. At the time, I'd trusted his judgment implicitly. It was ironic that the building I'd helped create now felt forbidden territory, a place where I didn't belong. The security guard recognized me, nodding as I swiped my badge. Afternoon, Ms. Lawson. Been a while since you visited the science side. Just a quick meeting, I replied, not stopping for pleasantries. The elevator carried me to the 3rd floor, where Mark's team occupied the entire wing. Through glass walls, I could see researchers in lab coats moving purposefully between workstations. In the center, Mark's office stood, glass-fronted like the others, but positioned to oversee the entire operation. He was at his desk, head bent over papers, exactly as I'd seen him hundreds of times during our marriage. Same concentrated frown, same habit of running fingers through dark hair now threaded with dignified silver at the temples. Before I could announce myself, he looked up. Our eyes met through the glass, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then, he stood, buttoning his lab coat as if donning armor. "Allison," he said as I entered, not quite meeting my eyes. "What budget allocation is so urgent it requires a Saturday meeting?" I closed his office door, acutely aware of curious glances from the lab staff. "We should speak privately. Everything I do here is confidential already." He gestured to a chair. "But please, sit." I remained standing. "Nexus Biotech, Mark? Really?" His expression shifted from professional neutrality to guarded anger. "Ah, so that's what this is about. Gerald sent his attack dog. Don't be childish. I'm here as CFO. Of course you are." He leaned back, studying me. "Tell me, did they promote you to CFO before or after our divorce? That's irrelevant, is it? Because I remember you turning down the Morgan position to avoid competing with my career. Now look at you. Power suit, executive title, corner office. I fought to keep my voice steady. We're not here to discuss my career choices. No, we're here because Gerald's afraid of losing his golden goose. Mark stood, moving to the window, overlooking the research floor. Did he tell you what Nexus is offering? No, but I can imagine. Can you? Triple my current salary, full research autonomy, a dedicated facility in Switzerland. He turned back to me. No more budget meetings or quarterly reviews. No more justifying every equipment request. You'd be working for Marcus Chen. Yes, a man who actually understands the value of our research. He understands its market potential. That's different. Mark's laugh was bitter. And Gerald doesn't? Why do you think he sent you, Allie? Because you're the only one who knows exactly how to manipulate me. The old nickname hit like a slap. Don't call me that. Not anymore. Right. Sorry. Ms. Lawson. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt. Look, I appreciate whatever loyalty you feel to Westridge, but this isn't your concern. It is when you're planning to take proprietary research to our biggest competitor. Research I developed, my team, my protocols, my breakthroughs, using Westridge resources, our funding, our facilities, the facilities you fought the board to. Approve? He smiled grimly. Yes, I heard about that presentation. Very passionate defense of the research division's needs. I believed in the work. I met his gaze directly. I still do. But you didn't believe in me. And there it was. The real issue, lurking beneath the professional veneer. I sank into the chair he'd offered earlier, suddenly exhausted. That's not true, Mark. I believed in you too much. What's that supposed to mean? It means I spent 10 years arranging my life around your ambitions, supporting your dreams while deferring mine, until I finally realized you never even noticed the sacrifice.
He stared at me for a long moment. Is that what you think? That I didn't notice? The champagne toast suggests otherwise. Color flooded his face. You heard about that. Just today, actually. Quite the celebration, was it? It wasn't. He stopped, regrouping. That was unprofessional. I'd had a difficult day. Poor Mark. Divorce is so hard when you're the one being left. You didn't leave, Allie. You detonated our entire life without warning. Without warning. I stood now, anger rising. What about the couples therapy you refused? The career discussions you dismissed? The fertility treatments you kept postponing because the timing wasn't right for your research? I never said no to children. You never said yes either. Just later, and soon, and after this project. Until I realized there would always be another project, another breakthrough, another reason to wait. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell the familiar mix of coffee and lab antiseptic. I was trying to build something meaningful, to make discoveries that could help thousands. While I was trying to build a life, a family. My voice cracked slightly. But you were always more comfortable with cells in petri dishes than actual human connections. That's not fair. No. When was the last time you asked about my dreams? My goals? The things I wanted beyond being Dr. Foster's supportive wife. He stepped back as if I'd pushed him. You never said. I said it constantly. You just never listened. I gathered my purse, needing to escape. The board meets Tuesday. They'll want to know your decision. Allison, wait. He caught my arm as I reached for the door. You're right, I didn't listen. Not enough. But this move to Nexus, it's not about the money. Then what is it about? Freedom. The chance to pursue the research without constraints. Without... He released my arm. Without constant reminders of what I lost. I studied his face. The familiar features arranged in unfamiliar vulnerability. You really want to work for Marcus Chen, a man who'd steal another company's research. He's not stealing anything. He's offering opportunity. He's offering revenge. Against Westridge. Against me. I opened the door. Just make sure you understand the real cost of taking it. Outside his office, I walked quickly toward the elevator, ignoring the stares of weekend researchers. Only when the doors closed did I allow myself to lean against the wall, hands shaking. My phone buzzed. Gerald. Any progress? I texted back. Meeting completed. Results inconclusive. Will update Monday. The lobby was empty when I emerged, my heels clicking loudly on polished floors. At my car, I discovered my hands were still trembling too much to insert the key. Ali, I turned to find Mark in the doorway. Lab coat gone, looking suddenly uncertain. What do you want, Mark? Have dinner with me. The request was so unexpected. I almost laughed. Excuse me. Not like that, just. There are things we should discuss. About the research, the team. He ran a hand through his hair again. Things I should have discussed with you years ago. I should have said no. Professional boundaries demanded it. Personal preservation screamed against it. But something in his expression, a vulnerability I'd rarely seen during our marriage, made me hesitate. 1 hour, I said finally. At Marino's. The place with the terrible wine list. The place that's public and always crowded. I met his gaze steadily. 1 hour, Mark. That's all. He nodded. I'll meet you there in 30 minutes. Marino's was packed as expected. The Saturday dinner crowd, in full swing. I claimed a small table near the bar, ordered a glass of the allegedly terrible wine, and tried to calm my racing thoughts. Mark arrived precisely on time, another familiar habit. He'd changed from lab casual to business casual, a transformation I'd watched countless times over our years together. You ordered wine, he noted, sitting across from me, making the best of that terrible wine list. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I never understood why you liked this place. Because it's unpretentious, real. I took a sip. Now, what did you want to discuss? He ordered his own glass before responding. The research we're doing, it's closer than anyone realizes. Even, Gerald, closer to what? A breakthrough. The gene therapy protocol we've been developing, it's showing unprecedented success rates in trials. I leaned forward slightly. How unprecedented? 87% efficacy in treating multiple autoimmune conditions. No significant side effects. His eyes lit with familiar enthusiasm. Ali, this could change everything. The way we treat lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis. That's remarkable. I processed the implications. Does Gerald know? Not the latest results. I was planning to present them at next month's board meeting. He paused. Before Nexus made their offer. And now I'm trying to decide what matters more. Loyalty to Westridge, or the chance to develop this without bureaucratic constraints. You mean without oversight? I mean without quarterly profit reviews, determining research priorities. He met my gaze directly. You know how Gerald operates. The moment these results go public, he'll want to fast-track everything for commercialization. That's literally the point of pharmaceutical research, Mark. To develop treatments that can actually help people, but rushing the process could compromise safety, limit applications. At Nexus, Marcus Chen will do exactly the same thing, just with more pressure and less ethical consideration. I set down my wine glass. You know his reputation. People change. Do they? I studied him carefully. Or do they just reveal who they really are when circumstances allow? The question hung between us, loaded with personal implications neither of us was ready to address. Mark broke eye contact first, turning his attention to the menu. We should order. You're on a schedule. We selected our meals with practiced efficiency. He still remembered my preferences, asking for the dressing on the side for my salad before I could mention it. When the waiter left, Mark leaned forward. What would it take? Excuse me? For Westridge to keep me. What would Gerald authorize? Larger lab, expanded team, autonomous research division. I'm not authorized to make those offers, but you could recommend them. I sipped my wine. Why should I? You've already decided to leave. I haven't signed anything yet, but you've made the champagne toast. The words escaped before I could stop them. Mark winced. I'm sorry about that. It was a moment of weakness. Celebrating our divorce with your colleagues was weakness? It wasn't celebration, Allie. It was... He sighed. It was me trying to pretend I wasn't devastated, putting on a show. The admission caught me off guard. During our marriage, Mark had rarely displayed vulnerability, maintaining the stereotypical scientist's emotional detachment I'd found so frustrating. You seemed perfectly fine during the proceedings. I said carefully. Your lawyer was quite efficient, because you'd already decided. You'd filed the papers, moved out while I was at a conference. What was I supposed to do? Beg? You could have fought for us long before that point. He looked down at his hands. I didn't know how. Our food arrived, creating a welcome interruption. We ate in silence for several minutes, the familiar rhythm of sharing a meal, stirring unwanted memories. The results, I said finally. If they're as promising as you say, Westridge would invest substantially in accelerated development. With what conditions? Standard milestones, regulatory requirements, timeline commitments. Mark shook his head. That's exactly the problem. Scientific discovery can't be scheduled like quarterly reports, but it can be resourced properly, supported institutionally, developed ethically. I set down my fork. What's Marcus really offering that has you so tempted? He hesitated. A chance to start over. Somewhere I'm not haunted. By what? By you. His directness was startling. Every board meeting, every company function, hearing announcements about your latest promotion, watching you thrive without me. I stared at him, incredulous. So this is about your ego. Poor Mark, having to witness his ex-wife succeed. It's about facing daily reminders of my failure. He pushed his plate away, not just as a husband, but as a person who couldn't balance ambition with basic human connection. And you think running to Switzerland will solve that? I think distance might provide perspective. I laughed without humor. That's convenient. Take Westridge's research to the competition and claim it's for personal growth. That's not fair. No? Then prove it. I leaned forward. If this is truly about the science and not about escaping uncomfortable feelings, stay at Westridge. I'll personally advocate for whatever research autonomy you need and work alongside you indefinitely. See you with someone new eventually. The question revealed more than he likely intended. I chose my next words carefully. We're adults, Mark. Professionals. If I can handle seeing the man who celebrated our divorce with champagne, you can handle whatever the future brings. He studied me with unexpected intensity. You're dating already? That's not relevant to this discussion. You are, aren't you? Something flashed in his eyes. Charlotte's always been eager to play matchmaker. I felt a flash of irritation. My personal life is no longer your concern. Of course. He sat back. Just making conversation. The waiter approached to clear our plates. Dessert menu? No. Thank you. I replied quickly. Just the check. Separate checks. Mark added, ignoring my surprise. When the waiter left, Mark leaned forward again. One question, completely off topic from Nexus. Mark, why did you really leave? The final straw. What was it? I stared at him, caught off guard by the directness. We've been over this multiple times. No, you've cited a list of accumulated grievances. But there was a moment, wasn't there? When you decided it was over. I considered deflecting, maintaining the professional boundary I'd insisted upon. But something in his expression, earnest, in a way he rarely displayed during our marriage, made me answer honestly. The night of the Griffin Foundation dinner, he frowned, searching his memory. That was nearly a year before you filed. Yes. What happened? I remember it was a successful evening. We secured additional funding for the lab. You secured funding. I wasn't even at your table. Because of the seating arrangements, the donors wanted, I know what they wanted. What I remember is watching you from across the room, laughing with the Griffin board, completely in your element. I paused, the memory still sharp, and realizing I felt utterly alone in a room full of people. That my husband hadn't looked for me once all evening. Ali, it was a fundraising event. I was working. You were always working. That night just crystallized what our marriage had become. Me watching your life from a distance. I met his gaze steadily. After the dinner, I tried to talk to you about feeling disconnected. You patted my hand and said we'd discuss it later. We never did. The checks arrived. Mark reached for his wallet. I had no idea. That was precisely the problem. We walked to the parking lot in silence. The evening had cooled, and I pulled my light jacket closer. I'll talk to Gerald on Monday, Mark said finally. About staying. About the research parameters. I stopped walking. Just like that, you made valid points about Nexus and Marcus. He shrugged, not quite meeting my eyes. Besides, the team is established here. Relocating would set us back months. Purely practical considerations. Isn't that what you wanted? A professional decision? Of course. I unlocked my car, relieved but oddly disappointed. I'll let Gerald know to expect your call. Allison. He hesitated. Would you consider meeting with me and Gerald together to discuss the autonomous research division concept? Is that necessary? You understand both the science value and the business constraints. You could help structure something that works for everyone. The request seemed reasonable, even as alarm bells sounded in my mind. One meeting, strictly professional. Of course. He stepped back. Thank you for dinner and for listening. As I drove home, I tried to sort through the contradictory emotions the evening had stirred. Relief that Mark might stay at Westridge, confusion about his motives, and an uncomfortable awareness that despite everything, some part of me still responded to his presence. Sunday morning, I woke to an email from Gerald. Heard from Mark. He's considering staying if we restructure research division. Meeting Monday, 9 a.m., my office. Well done, Allison. I stared at my phone screen, annoyed that Mark had contacted Gerald. Before I could provide context, always controlling the narrative. Another habit that hadn't changed. Charlotte called just as I was finishing my coffee. So, how was the emergency work situation? Complicated. Sounds fascinating. Her sarcasm was evident. Since you're free now, brunch with David. He's even more charming in daylight. Charlotte, I appreciate your efforts, but you're not ready. I know. She sighed dramatically. It's been almost a year, Ali. At some point you have to at least try. I am trying, in my own way. By working 60 hours a week. That's not trying, that's hiding. Her assessment hit uncomfortably close to home. I had dinner with Mark last night. What? Her tone shifted from teasing to alarmed. Why would you do that? It was work-related. He's considering leaving Westridge. Good riddance. Let him go. It's more complicated than that. I hesitated. The research he's doing, it's important. More important than your peace of mind. Did you forget what he put you through? I moved to my balcony, watching Sunday morning joggers in the park below. He said some things about the divorce, about his reaction. Oh no, don't tell me he's trying to rewrite history. No, it wasn't that. I struggled to articulate the nuance. He admitted to mistakes, failures. Mark Foster admitted failure. Alert the Nobel Committee. Charlotte's protective instincts were in full force. Whatever he's selling, don't buy it. Remember the woman who couldn't get out of bed for weeks after moving out, who questioned every career choice she'd ever made? I remember. Good. Because I'm not going through that with you again. Her voice softened. You're thriving now, Allie. Don't let him pull you back. After hanging up, I spent the day preparing for Monday's meeting, reviewing financial parameters for a potential research division restructure. The work provided welcome distraction from my conflicted thoughts. Monday morning arrived with a sense of foreboding. I dressed carefully in what Charlotte called my power armor. A tailored charcoal suit, silk blouse, subtle but expensive jewelry, professional confidence projected through deliberate choices. I reached Gerald's office 20 minutes early, intending to brief him before Mark arrived. To my surprise, Mark was already there. The two men reviewing documents at Gerald's conference table. Allison, excellent. Gerald greeted me enthusiastically. Mark's been sharing the latest trial results. Extraordinary progress. Mark stood as I entered, an old-fashioned courtesy he'd always maintained. Good morning. I see you've started without me. I kept my tone neutral as I took a seat opposite them, just catching Gerald up on the technical aspects. Mark pushed a folder toward me. The complete data set, if you want to review. I opened the folder, scanning the results. The numbers were indeed impressive, more so than Mark had indicated at dinner. This efficacy rate is remarkable, I acknowledged, especially in the lupus cohort. Exactly what I was just saying. Gerald interjected. This could be revolutionary. Mark's agreed to stay if we can create the right structure. And what structure is that? I directed my question to Mark. An autonomous research division, separate facility, dedicated budget, streamlined reporting. Mark maintained professional detachment, essentially operating as a subsidiary with its own governance but Westridge ownership. That's a significant restructuring. I looked to Gerald. With major financial implications, but potentially enormous return on investment, Gerald countered. Mark's team could deliver the most significant breakthrough in autoimmune treatment this decade. If the trials continue at current efficacy levels, I cautioned. They will. Mark's confidence was absolute. The board would require regular oversight, I noted. Complete transparency. Quarterly reviews are reasonable, Mark conceded. But scientific decisions need to remain with the research team. Gerald nodded eagerly. I think we can make this work. Allison, could you put together a preliminary financial structure? Something we can present to the board tomorrow. By tomorrow. I raised an eyebrow. Marcus Chen has given Mark until Wednesday to respond to the Nexus offer. Gerald explained, we need to move quickly. I glanced at Mark, who at least had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I'll need complete access to the research division's current financials, every budget line, every allocation, You'll have complete access. Mark agreed. I've instructed my team to provide whatever you need. Perfect. Gerald clapped his hands together. I'll brief the board chair this afternoon. With your financial assessment, Allison, and Mark's research data, I'm confident we can secure approval. I closed the folder, mind already calculating the massive undertaking ahead. I'll need a quiet space in the research building. And your administrative assistant, if possible. Take whatever resources you need. Gerald offered. This is our highest priority. As the meeting concluded, I gathered my notes, pointedly ignoring Mark's attempts to catch my eye. This would be a professional assessment, nothing more. "I'll walk you to the research building," Mark offered as we left Gerald's office. "That's not necessary." "Actually, it is. You'll need special access codes for the financial database." His tone was purely practical. "And I should introduce you to Dr. Chen. She manages our operational budget." I nodded stiffly, falling into step beside him. We walked in silence through the executive building and across the landscaped courtyard, separating the corporate offices from the research complex. "Thank you," Mark said unexpectedly as we approached the research building. "For what?" "For considering this restructuring. I know it means significant work for you. I'm doing my job." "Still, you could have told Gerald it wasn't feasible." I stopped walking. "Is that what you expected? That I'd sabotage your proposal out of personal resentment?" "No, he sighed. "I just mean I appreciate your professionalism, despite everything. Unlike someone who celebrates with champagne when professional and personal worlds collide." He winced. "I deserve that." "Yes, you do." I resumed walking. "Now tell me about Dr. Chen's budgeting system." The research building hummed with Monday morning activity. Scientists in lab coats moved purposefully between workstations, the air filled with the quiet intensity of focused intelligence. Mark led me to a small conference room near his office. "You can work here," he said, entering a code to unlock the door. "Private but central. I'll have Dr. Chen join us in 15 minutes. The room was well appointed. Comfortable chairs, large monitor, coffee station in the corner. I set up my laptop and began organizing the files I'd need to review. A soft knock preceded the arrival of a slender woman with intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. "Ms. Lawson, I'm Helen Chen, Operations Director." "Dr. Chen, thank you for making time." "Of course." Dr. Foster explained the situation. She placed a tablet on the table. "I've prepared a comprehensive overview of our current budget allocation, historical spending patterns, and projected needs based on research progression." I raised an eyebrow, impressed. "That's extremely thorough. We've been anticipating expansion for some time," she explained. "The efficacy results have exceeded even our optimistic projections." "So I understand." I gestured to the chair opposite. "Walk me through your current staffing structure." For the next hour, Helen provided a detailed explanation of the research, division's organization, resource allocation, and operational protocols. Her command of both scientific requirements and financial management was remarkable. "You've built an impressive system," I acknowledged when she finished. "Dr. Foster gives us significant autonomy. He believes administrative efficiency creates space for scientific creativity, and you report directly to him." "Yes," she hesitated, "though I understand that might change with restructuring." "Nothing's been decided," I assured her. "I'm just gathering information at this stage." Helen nodded and stood to leave. "I've granted you access to our complete financial database. If you need clarification on anything, I'm available." After she left, I immersed myself in the division's financial records. The more I reviewed, the more impressed I became with the operational structure Mark had established. The research budget was meticulously managed. Every dollar maximized for scientific impact. Very little administrative waste. I was so absorbed in my analysis that I didn't notice Mark's return until he placed a coffee cup beside my laptop. "You still take it black?" I glanced up, momentarily disoriented. "Yes, thank you." "How's it going?" "Your operation is remarkably efficient." I gestured to the spreadsheets displayed on my screen. "Helen runs a tight ship. She's exceptional. One of my first hires." Smart choice. I took a sip of the coffee, prepared exactly as I preferred. The preliminary numbers suggest the autonomous structure could be financially viable with proper oversight. That's good news. It's preliminary, I cautioned. I'll need to model various scenarios, particularly around milestone-based funding. Mark nodded, accepting the qualification. Would it help to see the labs? Get a clearer picture of what we're actually doing? I hesitated. Financial analysis could be done remotely, with data alone, yet understanding the physical operation would provide valuable context. A brief tour might be helpful, I conceded. Mark led me through security doors, into the heart of the research facility, a world I'd heard about for years but rarely seen. The main laboratory was an impressive expanse of cutting-edge equipment, workstations arranged in efficient clusters. Scientists engaged in various aspects of the research protocol. This is where we conduct the preliminary gene sequencing, Mark explained, professional pride evident in his voice. And over there, the CRISPR modification protocols are developed. As we moved through the space, I noticed how the researchers responded to Mark, with respect, but not deference. Comfortable offering opinions or asking questions. He'd created a collaborative environment where expertise was valued regardless of hierarchy. And this, he said, leading me into a smaller lab, is where the real magic happens. The room contains sophisticated biomedical equipment surrounding a series of specialized containment units. A young researcher looked up from her microscope. Dr. Foster, Ms. Lawson. She seemed unsurprised by my presence. Would you like to see the latest results? Absolutely, Mark answered. Allison, this is Dr. Patel, our lead developmental specialist. Dr. Patel guided us to a digital display showing cellular images. These are patient-derived cells from our lupus cohort. The left shows pre-treatment autoimmune response, the inflammatory cascade destroying healthy tissue. The images showed angry cellular chaos, biological warfare at microscopic level, and the right, she continued, shows the same cells after our gene therapy protocol. The difference was dramatic even to my untrained eye. Orderly cellular function, normal structures restored. We're not just suppressing symptoms, Mark explained. We're actually reversing the autoimmune response at the genetic level. How long does the effect last? I asked. So far, persistence is showing at 6 months with no degradation. Dr. Patel answered. We're tracking monthly, but all indicators suggest permanent modification, meaning potential cure, not just treatment, I translated, understanding the implications. Exactly. Mark's eyes lit with the passion that had always animated him when discussing his work. This isn't incremental improvement, Allison. It's transformational. Medicine. I studied the cellular images, the physical evidence of what the data had suggested. If these results held through expanded trials, this research truly could change millions of lives. Thank you, Dr. Patel, I said. This context is helpful for understanding the resource requirements. As we continued the tour, I observed details relevant to my financial assessment: equipment utilization, workspace efficiency, staff deployment. Mark answered my questions with transparent thoroughness, neither overselling nor understating the division's needs. Last stop, he said, leading me to a room at the far end of the facility, our patient liaison office. The space was entirely different from the sterile laboratories. Comfortable seating, warm lighting, walls decorated with framed letters and photographs. What is this? Where we meet with trial participants? The human side of the research. He gestured to the framed items. Letters and photos from people in our early trials, sharing what the treatment has meant for them. I moved closer to read one of the letters, written in slightly shaky handwriting. Dr. Foster and team, before your treatment, I couldn't hold my grandchildren because my hands hurt too badly. Last week, I picked up my newest granddaughter and gave her a bath for the first time. There aren't words for what this means. Thank you for giving me my life back. Beside the letter was a photo of an older woman holding an infant, beaming with joy. This is why you do it, I said softly. Yes. He stood beside me, looking at the photos. This is what I see when I'm pushing for more research time, more resources, more patience from the board. I absorbed the genuine human impact of his work, feeling oddly humbled. During our marriage, I'd understood Mark's research intellectually, but had rarely connected with its emotional significance. Standing in this room, surrounded by evidence of transformed lives, I glimpsed what drove him with such single-minded focus. You never showed me this part, I said quietly. I didn't think you'd be interested. Of course I would have been. I turned to face him. This is the meaning behind the science, the purpose behind the endless hours. A shadow of regret crossed his face. I compartmentalized too much. Work stayed at work, and home got whatever was left, which wasn't enough. He acknowledged the truth with a small nod. I see that now. We stood in uncomfortable silence, the weight of missed connections and lost opportunities hanging between us. Finally, I stepped back, retreating to safer professional ground. I should get back to the financial models. Of course. He escorted me back to the conference room, maintaining a careful distance. At the door, he hesitated. Will you need anything else for your assessment? I don't think so. Helen provided comprehensive data. Good. He seemed reluctant to leave. Allison, seeing those patients' stories. That's why Nexus is tempting. They're offering immediate expansion to international trials. Thousands more. Patients who could benefit sooner. Westridge could match that with proper structure. If the board approves, they will. I said with more confidence than I felt. The potential return on investment is undeniable. It's not always about ROI. In a publicly traded pharmaceutical company, it absolutely is. I softened my tone. But that doesn't mean we can't balance financial responsibility with scientific integrity. He studied me for a long moment. You've changed, meaning you're more assertive, confident in your perspective. I've always had strong opinions, Mark. I just stopped voicing them when it became clear they weren't valued. He absorbed this with a small frown. I should let you work. For the rest of the day, I immersed myself in financial projections, building models for the proposed autonomous research division. The numbers were promising. With appropriate milestones and governance, the investment could deliver exceptional returns while maintaining scientific integrity. By evening, my preliminary assessment was complete. I sent it to Gerald with a brief note explaining key assumptions and contingencies. His response was immediate and enthusiastic. Outstanding work, Allison. This gives us exactly what we need for the board. Presentation tomorrow at 10 a.m. Be prepared for detailed questions. I packed up my materials, noting the late hour. The research wing had quieted. Most staff departed for the day. As I walked through the main laboratory toward the exit, I noticed lights still shining from Mark's office. He sat at his desk, surrounded by research papers, completely absorbed, a scene I'd witnessed countless times during our marriage. For a moment, nostalgia washed over me, not for our relationship exactly, but for the simplicity of those early days when his dedication had seemed romantic rather than exclusionary. I continued toward the exit, not wanting to interrupt, but somehow he sensed my presence, looking up just as I passed. Allison, finished already? It's after 8, Mark. He glanced at his watch in surprise. I had no idea. Some things never change. The words came out more fondly than I'd intended. Did you complete your assessment? Yes. We present to the board tomorrow at 10. We? Gerald wants both of us there. Me for the financial structure, you for the scientific potential. I shifted my bag to my other shoulder. You should prepare a simplified explanation of the research that non-scientists can understand. He smiled slightly. Like I used to practice with you before conferences. The memory surfaced unexpectedly. Evening spent on our couch. Mark rehearsing presentations, while I played the role of scientifically illiterate audience member. One of the few ways our professional lives had productively intersected. Exactly like that. I returned his smile briefly. And just make sure to emphasize patient outcomes, not just scientific methodology. Show, don't just tell. I remember. He stood, stretching slightly. Have you eaten? The question hovered dangerously close to personal territory. I'll grab something. On the way home, of course. He nodded, accepting the boundary. I'll see you tomorrow then. I arrived at the Westridge boardroom, 30 minutes early, wanting to review my presentation one final time. The space remained as imposingly formal as ever. Gleaming mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Gerald joined me shortly after, practically vibrating with enthusiasm. Allison, this financial model is brilliant. The milestone-based funding approach should satisfy even our most risk-averse board members. Thank you. It balances scientific freedom with fiscal responsibility. Exactly what we need. He surveyed the empty boardroom. Mark's not here yet. The presentation isn't for another 20 minutes. True, but Gerald checked his watch. I thought you two might want to coordinate your approaches. We're presenting different aspects. There's no need to coordinate. Gerald studied me with unexpected perceptiveness. How are you handling this? Working with Mark again. Professionally, I answered simply. Of course, it's just, I know the circumstances weren't ideal. That's putting it mildly. He nodded, seeming to choose his words carefully. For what it's worth, he's not the same since you left. More, I don't know, reflective maybe. Divorce tends to prompt reflection. I replied neutrally, uncomfortable with the personal turn in the conversation. Board members began arriving, saving me from further discussion. I greeted each with professional cordiality, distributing printed copies of my presentation. Mark arrived precisely 5 minutes before the scheduled start, looking surprisingly well prepared in a crisp suit. Rather than his usual lab coat over, business casual. Good morning, he nodded to me. Ready? As ever, the board chair called the meeting to order at precisely 10 o'clock. Gerald opened with a brief overview of the situation, framing it skillfully as an opportunity rather than a crisis. Before we discuss the proposed restructuring, I'd like Dr. Foster to share the breakthrough research that makes this investment so compelling. Mark moved to the front of the room with practiced confidence. In the 10 years I'd known him, he'd evolved from a nervous presenter into a polished scientific communicator. Today, he was at his best, explaining complex gene therapy protocols in accessible language, emphasizing patient outcomes rather than technical details, directly addressing potential concerns before they could be raised. What we're proposing isn't just another treatment, he concluded. It's a potential cure for conditions that affect millions worldwide. Our preliminary results show efficacy rates that exceed anything currently available by orders of magnitude. The board members' expressions showed genuine interest, even excitement, rather than the polite attention scientific presentations typically received. When Mark finished, several leaned forward with thoughtful questions. which he answered with transparent thoroughness. This is indeed impressive, the board chair acknowledged. But expanding research of this magnitude requires significant investment. Ms. Lawson, please walk us through the financial implications. My presentation followed, detailing the proposed autonomous research division structure, budgets, governance, milestone requirements, and projected returns. The financial models showed clear pathways to profitability with appropriate risk mitigation strategies. In summary, I concluded, the proposed restructuring represents a significant but calculated investment with exceptional potential return, both financially and in terms of market position. The questions came rapid fire, incisive inquiries into assumptions, contingencies, milestone definitions, and governance mechanisms. I addressed each with data-driven precision, occasionally deferring to Mark on scientific specifics. What surprised me was how seamlessly we collaborated, picking up each other's threads, reinforcing key points, presenting a unified vision despite our personal history. The professional rhythm we'd once shared re-emerged effortlessly. One final question, said Patricia Reynolds, our most skeptical board member. Dr. Foster, what assurance do we have that you're committed to Westridge long-term? After considering Nexus's offer, your dedication seems flexible. Mark glanced briefly in my direction before responding. My commitment is to the research and the patients who stand to benefit. Westridge has supported this work from its earliest stages, and with this proposed structure, can provide the ideal environment for its completion. That's not quite an answer, Patricia pressed. What's to prevent you from taking our investment in this autonomous division and departing for a competitor next year? Mark straightened slightly. I understand your concern. I'm willing to commit, contractually, to a minimum 5-year term as research director with appropriate non-compete clauses. Patricia raised an eyebrow. 5 years is substantial. You're that confident in the research timeline? I am. Mark's certainty was absolute. With the resources outlined in Ms. Lawson's proposal, we can complete clinical trials and move to market within that time frame. The board chair exchanged glances with other members before addressing us both. Thank you for this comprehensive presentation. We'd like to deliberate privately now. Gerald ushered us out to the executive waiting area, barely containing his optimism. That went exceptionally well. The board seemed genuinely impressed. Patricia still has concerns. I noted, she always does. It's literally her job to be skeptical. Gerald checked his phone. I need to make a quick call. Back in 5. With Gerald gone, Mark and I found ourselves alone in the waiting area. He paced slowly, a habit from our marriage that signaled both nervous energy and focused thought. You were right about emphasizing patient outcomes, he said finally. That connected with them more than the scientific metrics. The board responds to human impact, not just data, something I'm still learning. He stopped pacing. Your presentation was impressive. You've always had a gift for making complex financial structures accessible. Thank you. He hesitated. We worked well together in there. We always did professionally, I acknowledged. It was the personal side that faltered. Before he could respond, Gerald returned, followed moments later by the board chair's assistant. There, ready for you, she announced. Back in the boardroom, the atmosphere had shifted subtly. The board chair addressed us with measured formality. After careful consideration, we've decided to approve the Autonomous Research Division structure as presented with 3 conditions. Gerald nodded eagerly. Of course. What conditions? First, Dr. Foster must sign the 5-year commitment he offered, with comprehensive non-compete provisions. Mark nodded his acceptance. Second, quarterly milestone reviews will be mandatory, with funding contingent on research progression as outlined in Ms. Lawson's model. Another reasonable request, I thought. And third, the chair continued, looking directly at me. We want Ms. Lawson to serve as financial director for the new division, reporting jointly to the board and to Dr. Foster. My surprise must have shown on my face. That wasn't part of the proposal. No, but we believe it's essential, Patricia interjected. You developed the financial structure. You understand both the business imperatives and the scientific vision. And frankly, you've demonstrated you can work effectively with Dr. Foster despite your personal history. I glanced at Mark, whose expression revealed equal surprise. This would be in addition to my CFO responsibilities. Initially, yes, the board chair confirmed, though depending on the division's growth, it might evolve into a full-time position. Gerald leaned toward me. It's an exceptional opportunity, Allison. Essentially creating a new business unit from the ground up. And ensuring proper governance, Patricia added pointedly. I understood the unspoken message. The board trusted Mark's science, but not his business judgment. They wanted me as the safeguard, the one who could say no when necessary, who understood financial boundaries. I'll need to consider the expanded responsibilities, I said carefully. Of course, the board chair nodded. But we'll need your decision. By tomorrow, Dr. Foster's deadline with Nexus remains in effect. After the meeting adjourned, Gerald pulled us both into his office, barely containing his excitement. Tim, this is perfect. Exactly what we hoped for. Full funding, board support, and the ideal leadership team. He looked between us. You two created magic in that boardroom today. Imagine what you could accomplish running the division together. Mark cleared his throat. Gerald, could you give us a moment? Of course. Of course. Gerald backed toward his door. Take my office. I need to call legal about drafting the agreements anyway. When the door closed behind him, Mark turned to me. This wasn't my idea. I didn't think it was. I sank into one of Gerald's visitor chairs. The board is clearly concerned about oversight. They don't trust me. His tone held more resignation than offense. They don't trust anyone with this much money and potential. It's their fiduciary responsibility. Mark sat in the chair beside me rather than across the desk. A choice that felt oddly intimate. What are you thinking? I considered the question carefully. Professionally, it's an intriguing opportunity. Building a division from scratch. Balance between scientific innovation and fiscal responsibility. And personally, that's more complicated. I met his gaze directly. Working closely together again. It would require very clear boundaries. Agreed. He hesitated. For what it's worth, I think you'd be exceptional in the role. You understand what we're trying to accomplish better than anyone else in the company. Because I spent years listening to you talk about it. Exactly. You have context no other financial director could possibly have. He leaned forward slightly. And selfishly, I'd rather work with someone who already understands my quirks. Despite everything, I found myself smiling. You mean your tendency to ignore budget constraints when you're excited about a research pathway? Among other things, his answering smile was cautious. We could establish clear protocols, defined areas of authority, professional boundaries. We'd need to. Is it something you'd consider? Honestly, I looked away, gathering my thoughts. The opportunity was undeniably compelling from a career perspective. Creating and managing a semi-autonomous research division would add significant experience to my professional portfolio. But the personal complications seemed daunting. I need time to think, I said finally. Of course. He stood, respecting my space. For what it's worth, Allison, whatever you decide. I'm grateful for your work on this. Without your financial model, the board would never have approved the restructuring. After Mark left, I remained in Gerald's office, mind racing with implications and possibilities. My phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. "Dinner tonight. David had to cancel, but I'm still hungry. Can't. Work crisis. Rain check." Her response was immediate. "Is this about Mark?" Mia from accounting told me there were rumors. I sighed. Corporate gossip traveled at light speed. "Not a crisis exactly. Just complicated. I'll explain later." "You better. And it better not involve you spending more time with him." If she only knew what the board was proposing. I pocketed my phone without responding and gathered my presentation materials. What I needed was space to think, away from Gerald's enthusiasm, the board's expectations, and especially Mark's presence. Back in my office, I found Helen Chen waiting. "Ms. Lawson, I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all. What can I do for you?" She hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. "I heard about the board's conditions, about you potentially overseeing the division's finances. News truly did travel fast. That's still under consideration." "I understand." She straightened slightly. "I wanted to offer my perspective, if you'd be open to it. Please. The team respects you, even those who know about your history with Dr. Foster. They've seen your financial stewardship of the company, how you've balanced growth with stability. That's good to know. More importantly," she continued, "Dr. Foster needs someone who understands both the science and the business realities. Someone who can say no when necessary, without shutting down the innovative spirit that drives our work." I studied her carefully. "You seem to have given this considerable thought." "I care about this research, about its potential." She met my gaze steadily. "And frankly, about Dr. Foster's tendency to overextend when he's passionate about a project." "You know him well," I observed. "I've worked with him for 5 years." In a professional capacity, she added quickly, perhaps sensing a question I hadn't actually intended. "His scientific brilliance is unmatched, but his administrative awareness is selective." I couldn't help smiling at the diplomatic phrasing. That's one way to put it. The team needs this restructuring to succeed. We need someone who can protect the research while enforcing necessary financial discipline. She stood to leave. "I just wanted you to know that if you accepted the position, you'd have the team's support." After Helen left, I sat at my desk, turning over the various perspectives and implications. The research itself was undeniably important, the opportunity professionally significant, the complications personally challenging. By evening, I'd drafted a list of conditions under which I might accept the position. Clear authority delineations, reporting structures, conflict resolution mechanisms. Essentially, a professional prenuptial agreement that would prevent history from repeating itself. I was reviewing these notes when my office phone rang. "Mark, I need to respond to Marcus Chen by tomorrow morning," he said, without preamble. "Have you made a decision?" "I'm still considering it." A pause. "The board's offer is contingent on your acceptance. If you decline, they'll likely reassess the entire restructuring. I'm aware." "Allison," he hesitated. "I don't want to pressure you. This has to be your choice. Freely made." The sincerity in his voice gave me pause. The Mark I'd been married to would have focused solely on what he needed, what the research required. "I've drafted some parameters," I said, finally. "Professional boundaries that would need to be established for this arrangement to work." "That's entirely reasonable. Would you be willing to discuss them?" I checked my watch. Nearly 8. "Now, if possible, given the timeline." I sighed, recognizing the practical necessity. "Where are you?" "Still at the lab." "Of course you are." Some patterns truly never changed. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The research building was quiet when I arrived. Most of the team gone for the day. Mark waited in the conference room where I'd worked on the financial models, a stack of papers spread before him. "Thank you for coming," he said, standing as I entered. "I ordered dinner. Hope that's okay." I noticed the takeout containers on the side table. From my favorite Thai place, not his. A small consideration that shouldn't have registered emotionally, but somehow did. Fine, let's focus on the parameters. I pulled out my notes and began outlining the conditions. Clear separation of financial and scientific decisions. Defined escalation protocols for disagreements. Regular independent reporting to the board. Separate office spaces in whatever new facility was established. Mark listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but raising no objections. When I finished, he nodded thoughtfully. These all seem reasonable. I particularly agree about the separate office spaces and independent board reporting. You do? Of course. He looked surprised at my surprise. The division's success depends on maintaining both scientific integrity and financial discipline. Your independence is essential for that balance. I studied him, trying to reconcile this reasonable, collaborative Mark with the single-minded scientist I'd been married to. "What's changed?" I asked finally. "I have." He met my gaze directly. "Losing you forced me to examine patterns I'd taken for granted. How I communicated, how I balanced, or failed to balance, personal and professional priorities. People don't change that fundamentally, Mark. They do when the consequences of not changing become unbearable." He looked down at his hands. "The champagne toast you heard about. It wasn't celebration, it was theater. Pretending I wasn't devastated while surrounded by colleagues who'd watched our marriage disintegrate for years. I remained silent, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected vulnerability. "I'm not telling you this to change your mind about us," he continued. "That ship has sailed. I'm telling you because I want you to know that professionally, I'm not the same person who took your support for granted, who dismissed your perspective because it wasn't scientific." His words hung in the air between us, laden with implications I wasn't prepared to address. Instead, I redirected to safer ground. "Tell me more about the Nexus offer. What specifically made it appealing beyond the financial package?" Mark accepted. The change in subject with a small nod. The dedicated facility in Switzerland. State-of-the-art equipment. Proximity to international research centers. Access to a more diverse patient population for trials. Those are all elements we could incorporate into the Westridge restructuring. Yes, but there's also the regulatory environment. European authorities sometimes approve novel therapies faster than the FDA. I considered this. We could establish a parallel European trial program under the new division, not necessarily in Switzerland, but perhaps Germany or the Netherlands, where we already have research relationships. That would address a significant advantage of the Nexus offer. He acknowledged. What else? Autonomy from quarterly shareholder. Pressures. Marcus promised a minimum 3-year runway without profit expectations. That's actually built into my financial model already. The milestone funding isn't tied to profit generation until Phase 3 clinical trials are complete. Mark looked genuinely surprised. You incorporated that. Of course. Premature commercialization pressure could compromise research integrity. The model assumes significant investment with delayed, but substantial returns. He seemed momentarily at a loss for words. That's exactly what the research needs. I know. I did listen all those years when you complained about short-term profit demands, undermining long-term scientific potential. He smiled slightly, apparently more attentively than I realized. We continued reviewing the Nexus offer, point by point, identifying elements that could be incorporated into the Westridge restructuring. The conversation flowed with unexpected ease, professional, focused, yet without the strained formality that had characterized our initial interactions. By the time we finished, the takeout containers were empty, and it was past 10. "I think we've addressed everything," Mark said, reviewing his notes. Westridge can match or exceed the substantive elements of Marcus's offer, so you'll stay. Regardless of my decision about the financial director position, he hesitated. The board made your involvement a condition of the approval. They could reconsider if I declined, but proposed an alternative oversight structure. They could. He looked at me directly. But I wouldn't want them to. Why not? Because you're the right person for this role, Allison. You understand the science, the market potential, and the financial realities. And more importantly, you're not afraid to challenge me when necessary. The honesty in his assessment was disarming. There would be challenges. Working together so closely after everything. Undoubtedly. But I think we've proven over the past few days that we can maintain a professional dynamic despite our history. I gathered my notes, needing space to process. "I'll give you my decision in the morning. Thank you." He walked me to the elevator. "Whatever you decide, I appreciate your consideration." As the doors closed between us, I felt a curious mix of professional excitement and personal trepidation. The opportunity was exceptional, the work meaningful, but could we truly transcend our past to build something new? At home, I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto my balcony, watching the city lights while weighing the decision. My phone rang. "Charlotte," predictably persistent. "Finally, I've been trying to reach you all evening. What's going on with Mark?" I sighed. "It's complicated." That's what people say when they're making bad decisions, but don't want to admit it. The board wants me to co-lead a new research division with him. Her sharp intake of breath was audible. "Tell me you said no." "I haven't decided yet." "Ali, have you forgotten the months after you left? How broken you were? This is professional, not personal. With Mark, those lines have always blurred. That was half the problem." Her concern was evident. "Is this about the research, or is it about unresolved feelings?" "The research," I answered firmly. "It's important work that could help millions. And there's no one else who could provide financial oversight, not with my specific knowledge of the project and parameters." Charlotte's skepticism was palpable. "Just promise me you'll protect yourself, professionally and personally." "I've drafted explicit parameters, clear boundaries. Like that worked so well during your marriage." She sighed. "I love you, which means I'll support whatever you decide. But please, be careful." After we hung up, I returned to my balcony contemplation. Charlotte's concerns weren't unfounded. During our marriage, professional and personal boundaries had constantly blurred. Mark's research dominating our conversations, his lab schedule dictating our social calendar, his career priorities superseding mine, and yet, something had shifted in our recent interactions. The collaboration felt more balanced, his listening more genuine. Was it possible that divorce had actually taught him what marriage couldn't? By morning, I'd made my decision. I arrived at Westridge early, stopping first at Gerald's office to outline my conditions. "These all seem reasonable," he agreed, reviewing my parameters. "I'll have them incorporated into the formal division charter." "One more thing," I added. "I want a 6-month review period. If the arrangement isn't working, I need the freedom to step away without compromising the division's funding." Gerald nodded thoughtfully. "Fair enough, though I'm confident you won't need it." From there, I went directly to the research building. Mark was in his office, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw me, he quickly ended the call. "Allison, have you decided?" "Yes." I took a seat across from him. "I'll accept the position, under the conditions we discussed yesterday, plus one addition, a 6-month evaluation period, after which I can choose to continue or transition the role to someone else." Relief washed across his face. "Thank you. The research team will be thrilled. I'm doing this for the science, Mark, and for my own professional development, not for you." "I understand completely." His tone was carefully neutral. "Do you want to inform the team together, or would you prefer I handle it? Together would be more appropriate. They should see us as a unified leadership team from the beginning." He nodded, standing. Most of the key personnel arrived by 9. We could gather them in the main conference room. Perfect. As we walked through the research floor, I noticed curious glances from early arriving scientists. News of the board's decision had clearly spread, along with speculation about my potential role. Mark arranged for Helen to gather the senior researchers while I reviewed my notes. By 9:15, the conference room held about 20 people, team leaders from various research specialties, administrative directors, and key technical staff. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Mark began. "As you may have heard, the board has approved our proposal for an autonomous research division focused on the autoimmune gene therapy protocols." Excited murmurs spread through the room. This restructuring provides significant advantages: dedicated facilities, expanded resources, streamlined approval processes, and most importantly, protection from short-term profit pressures. He gestured toward me. "Working with Ms. Lawson, we've developed a financial model that balances scientific needs with business realities. I'm pleased to announce that she has agreed to join the division as financial director, working alongside me to ensure both the research integrity and fiscal responsibility of our operations." I stood, addressing the team directly. For those who don't know me beyond my CFO role, I want to emphasize that I deeply believe in the importance of this research. My priority will be creating the financial infrastructure that supports your scientific innovation, not restricting it. The response was cautiously positive. Nods of acknowledgement, a few welcoming smiles. Helen caught my eye with a subtle look of approval. Over the coming weeks, I continued, we'll be developing the specific governance structures and operational protocols for the new division. I welcome your input on how financial processes can best support your scientific work. After the announcement, we fielded questions about timelines, resource allocation, and reporting structures. Throughout, Mark and I maintained a united front, reinforcing each other's points and demonstrating the collaborative leadership approach we'd discussed. When the meeting concluded, Helen approached us. "Congratulations to you both. The team seems energized by the news. Thank you for your help organizing everyone." Mark responded. "Could you schedule individual meetings with each team leader for next week? Ms. Lawson and I should understand their specific needs as we develop the division. Structural. Of course, I'll set those up today." As Helen walked away, Mark turned to me. "I should call Marcus Chen. Formally decline the Nexus offer." "You haven't done that yet. I wanted to be certain about your decision first. Over the next few weeks, Mark and I fell into an unexpectedly effective professional rhythm. We divided responsibilities logically, he leading scientific direction, me establishing financial frameworks. Both of us collaborating on strategics, planning for the new division. Gerald expedited the administrative processes, eager to formalize the restructuring before anyone could reconsider. Legal drafted contracts. HR prepared new organizational charts. and facilities began evaluating potential locations for our dedicated research space. What do you think of these architectural renderings? Mark asked one afternoon, spreading floor plans across the conference room table. The board approved renovating the East Campus building for our use. I reviewed the designs: modern lab spaces, efficient workflow patterns, collaborative areas interspersed with focused work zones. It looks comprehensive, but I don't see designated financial offices, just scientific workspaces and your director's suite. Ah, he shuffled through the plans, pulling out another sheet. That's because I thought the administrative wing should have separate consideration. Here's what I had in mind. The additional renderings showed a thoughtfully designed administrative section, including a corner office for the financial director, equal in size and positioning to the scientific director's suite. The architect included skylights in both our offices. Mark explained. Natural light improves productivity, and the connecting door between our sections has privacy glass that can be clear or opaque, depending on whether we're collaborating or working independently. I was surprised by the consideration evident in the design. You've put significant thought into this. It's important that both sides of the division have equal standing, spatially and symbolically. He pointed to a central conference area, and this shared space bridges the administrative and scientific sections, reinforcing our collaborative leadership model. The approach was thoughtful, balanced, and unexpectedly sensitive to governance dynamics. Nothing like the research-dominant perspective Mark would have advocated during our marriage. I approve, I said, genuinely impressed. When does construction begin? Next month, if the board signs off. We'll occupy temporary space until completion. And the team structure. That's our next major decision. He pulled out another document. I've drafted a proposed organizational chart, but I'd like your input before finalizing. Again, I was struck by the balanced approach, clearly defined reporting lines, appropriate hierarchical structures, integrated touchpoints between scientific and administrative functions. This looks workable, I acknowledged. Though I'd suggest adding a joint compliance position, reporting to both of us. Excellent point, he made a note. Someone to ensure we meet both scientific and financial regulatory requirements. Our working sessions continued with similar productive collaboration. Mark consistently demonstrated respect for my expertise, incorporated my suggestions, and maintained appropriate professional boundaries. It was disconcerting how easily we established this new dynamic. So different from our married interactions, yet built on the foundation of knowing each other's thought processes. Charlotte remained skeptical during our weekly dinners. So, he's being reasonable, professional, respectful. She raised an eyebrow. That doesn't sound like the Mark you divorced. People can change, I offered tentatively. Temporarily maybe, when it serves their interests. She speared a piece of chicken with unnecessary force. Just wait until there's a real conflict. A research direction you think is too expensive. A timeline you believe is unrealistic. That's when you'll see the real Mark re-emerge. Perhaps. I sipped my wine thoughtfully. But so far he's been surprisingly collaborative. She studied me carefully. You're not developing feelings again, are you? Absolutely not. The denial came quickly. Perhaps too quickly. This is strictly professional. Good, because David the lawyer has been asking about you again. I groaned. Charlotte, I'm not interested in dating right now. I'm establishing a major new division at work. All work and no play makes Allie a lonely spinster. Better a happy spinster than a miserable wife. Been there, done that, she conceded with a dramatic sigh. Fine, but promise you'll keep your guard up with Mark. People show their best selves when things are easy. True character emerges during conflict. Her warning echoed in my mind the following week when our first significant disagreement arose. The board had requested a detailed budget for the first year of operations, including staffing projections and equipment acquisitions. Mark's initial draft budget included 3 specialized gene sequencers, cutting-edge equipment with 7-figure price tags. 3 is excessive, I said during our review session. The utilization data doesn't support that level of capacity. We're projecting expanded trials, he countered. 1 sequencer won't be sufficient. I understand that, but 2 would provide adequate capacity with appropriate scheduling at half the additional cost. He frowned. The familiar expression of scientific obstinacy I remembered from countless marital disagreements. This, I thought, was the moment Charlotte had predicted, where professional collaboration would collapse under the weight of conflicting priorities. Let me show you something, he said, surprising me by pulling out detailed utilization projections, rather than dismissing my concern. If we run trials at the accelerated pace the board wants, even 2 sequences would create bottlenecks here, here, and here. I studied the data carefully. What about outsourcing those specific sequences? There are specialized labs that could handle the overflow at approximately 60% of the capital investment cost. He considered this thoughtfully. That could work for the secondary verifications. But the primary sequences should remain in-house for security and quality control. Agreed. If we outsource the secondary work, 2 sequences should be sufficient for the primary research. Instead of arguing further, Mark nodded. That's a reasonable compromise. I'll adjust the budget and add a line for outsourced sequencing services. I waited for the other shoe to drop. The resentment, the passive-aggressive comments about financial constraints hampering scientific progress. They never came. Instead, Mark integrated the change efficiently and moved on to the next budget category. Later, that day, I mentioned the interaction to Helen during our weekly operations review. You seem surprised that he accepted the compromise, she observed. Frankly, yes. In the past, equipment discussions were rarely that rational. Helen smiled slightly. He's been working on his approach to collaborative decision-making. Actually, sought input from the team on effective communication strategies. Mark did? Voluntarily. He's quite determined to make this new division succeed. She hesitated. If you don't mind my saying so, he seems equally determined to prove he can work effectively with you. I'd processed this information carefully. In your observation, is it genuine or performance for strategic benefit? Ms. Lawson, I've worked with Dr. Foster through several major research transitions. I've never seen him put this much consistent effort into changing his leadership approach. She gathered her files, preparing to leave. People do sometimes learn from their mistakes. Even brilliant scientists who think they know everything. The following weeks brought similar tests of our new professional dynamic. Budget allocations, staffing decisions, timeline commitments, each presenting potential conflict points. Yet repeatedly, Mark demonstrated unexpected flexibility, genuine listening, and willingness to compromise when presented with logical alternatives. Meanwhile, the division took tangible shape. Construction began on our dedicated facility. Key personnel received formal appointments to the new organizational structure. The board approved our first-year operating budget, including the 2 gene sequences with outsourced secondary sequencing. We should celebrate these milestones, Gerald suggested during our monthly progress review. Perhaps a dinner for the core leadership team, 15 people or so. That seems appropriate, Mark agreed, looking to me for confirmation. Yes, Team building is important during transitions. I concurred. The Westlake private dining room might be suitable. Excellent. I'll have my assistant make the arrangements. Gerald closed his portfolio with satisfaction. This restructuring is proceeding better than I dared hope. You two have established a remarkable working relationship. After Gerald left, Mark lingered in the conference room. He's right, about our working relationship. It has been unexpectedly functional, I acknowledged. More than functional. Productive. Balanced. He hesitated. I've been meaning to say, I appreciate how you've approached this, Allison. Professional but not cold. Firm on important points, but open to discussion. That's my job. No, your job was financial oversight. The collaborative approach was a choice. His expression held genuine appreciation. One I recognize hasn't always been easy, given our history. The sincerity in his voice stirred uncomfortable emotions, not romantic feelings, but a wistful recognition of what our marriage might have been with this version of Mark. We should focus on the team dinner, I said, redirecting to safer territory. Perhaps we should coordinate remarks. A unified vision statement. Good idea. He accepted the change in subject gracefully. I can draft something about the scientifics, objectives. You can add the operational framework, and we can blend them together. That works. Let's plan to review it next Tuesday. The division celebration dinner was scheduled for the following Friday evening. Gerald reserved the entire private dining space at Westlake, an upscale venue favored for corporate events. The guest list included our core leadership team, key board members, and essential support personnel. Will you be bringing anyone? Charlotte asked when I mentioned the dinner during our weekly call. Perhaps a certain lawyer with great hair. It's a corporate function, not a dating opportunity. Corporate functions are perfect dating opportunities. Shows off your professional success. Introduces him to your world. Charlotte. Is Mark bringing someone? She interrupted, cutting to what she clearly viewed as the heart of the matter. The question caught me off guard. I hadn't considered the possibility of Mark bringing a date to the team dinner. I have no idea. It's not my concern. Her skepticism was audible. Just be prepared. That's all I'm saying. Nothing worse than being blindsided by your ex's new romance at a work event. Her warning lingered unpleasantly in my mind. Was Mark seeing someone? The thought shouldn't matter to me professionally. Yet I found myself irrationally concerned about the potential awkwardness at the team dinner. The question was inadvertently answered. During my next meeting with Helen, who was reviewing the final dinner arrangements, Dr. Foster asked if the team members could bring guests. She mentioned casually, I referred him to you since it affects the budget. What did you tell him? That I'd check with you. She looked surprised by my intensity. Is it a problem? No, not at all. I modulated my tone to professional neutrality. Guests are fine for team members. The budget can accommodate it. Later that day, Mark stopped by my office, tablet in hand. Do you have a minute to review the joint remarks for the dinner? Of course. I gestured to the visitor chair. He handed me the tablet, displaying our merged statement. Scientific vision, seamlessly integrated with operational framework. The language balanced and inclusive. This looks excellent, I acknowledged. You've captured the collaborative spirit effectively. Thank you. I tried to emphasize how the administrative and scientific elements reinforce each other. He hesitated. Helen mentioned she spoke with you about guests for the dinner. Yes. It's fine within the budget parameters. Good. He seemed relieved. Some team members were asking, particularly those relocating for the new division. It's a chance for partners to meet colleagues. Will you be bringing someone? The question escaped before I could reconsider its appropriateness. He looked surprised. No, I'm not currently seeing anyone. I see. I kept my expression neutral while processing a completely irrational sense of relief. Neither am I. Bringing anyone, that is. Right. He stood, retrieving his tablet. So we're set for the remarks. 5 minutes each, then a joint toast. Perfect. The evening of the dinner arrived with unexpected social anxiety. I dressed carefully in a navy cocktail dress. Professional, but appropriately formal for the upscale venue. Charlotte had insisted on helping me prepare, using the opportunity to continue her campaign for post-divorce dating. You look gorgeous, she declared, finishing my makeup. It's criminal that you're going alone. It's a work function, not a social event. Every event is potentially social for single professionals. She studied me critically. Promise me something. If an attractive, intelligent man strikes up conversation tonight, you won't immediately shut it down with work talk. Charlotte, promise. One conversation that isn't about financial models or corporate restructuring. I sighed. Fine, I promise. I arrived at Westlake precisely on time. The private dining room was elegantly arranged. Soft lighting, tasteful floral centerpieces, discreet Westridge branding on the welcome materials. Gerald had spared no expense, clearly viewing this as more than a routine team gathering. Mark was already there, engaged in conversation with board members near the entrance. He wore a charcoal suit that I didn't recognize, new, well-tailored, subtly enhancing his lean frame. He looked up as I entered, a brief expression of appreciation, crossing his face before he resumed professional composure. Allison. He excused himself from his conversation to greet me. You look lovely. Thank you. I accepted the compliment with professional grace. Everything looks wonderful. Gerald outdid himself. Indeed, he's treating this like a coronation. Mark gestured toward the elaborately set tables. The board members seem impressed. We circulated separately for the next half hour, greeting team members and their guests, exchanging pleasantries with board directors. I noticed Mark maintained appropriate professional distance, careful not to create any appearance of personal connection beyond our leadership roles. At dinner, we were seated at the head table with Gerald between us, a thoughtful arrangement that allowed us to present as unified leadership without awkward proximity. The meal progressed pleasantly, conversation flowing easily among the assembled colleagues. After the main course, Gerald stood for opening remarks, praising the vision of the new division and the remarkable leadership synergy Mark and I had established. He then introduced us for our joint presentation. Mark spoke first, eloquently describing the scientific mission and potential patient impact. His genuine passion for the research was evident, though carefully balanced with acknowledgement of operational realities. When he introduced me, his tone conveyed sincere professional respect. While I focus on scientific possibilities, Ms. Lawson ensures those possibilities become practical realities, he concluded. Our division's unique strength lies in this balanced perspective. I followed with my portion, outlining the innovative operational structure and strategic financial approach. Throughout, I reinforced the theme of integrated leadership, scientific ambition, supported by administrative excellence. Together, we concluded in rehearsed unison, raising our glasses to transforming research into reality. The team responded enthusiastically, clearly energized by the vision and leadership model we'd presented. As we retook our seats, Gerald leaned between us. Absolutely perfect, he whispered. The board is thoroughly impressed. The evening continued with dessert and coffee. Team members moving between tables for more informal conversations. I was speaking with Dr. Patel about European trial protocols. when I noticed Mark deep in discussion with Patricia Reynolds, our most skeptical board member. From her animated gestures and his focused attention, the conversation appeared intense, but positive. "Excuse me," Patricia said, approaching our table. "Dr. Patel, might I borrow Ms. Lawson for a moment?" "Of course." Dr. Patel smiled graciously and moved to another conversation. Patricia took the vacated seat. "That was quite an impressive presentation, Allison. You and Mark have clearly developed an effective partnership." "Thank you. We've worked hard to establish complementary leadership roles. So I see. Very different from your previous relationship dynamic. From what I understand." I tensed slightly. "Our professional collaboration is entirely separate from our personal history." Evidently. She sipped her wine thoughtfully. Mark was just sharing some of the European expansion concepts. Ambitious but sound, with your financial framework supporting them. We believe international trials will accelerate both the research timeline and market potential. I agree. In fact, several of us on the board are discussing increasing the division's initial funding allocation based on what we've seen tonight. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Between us, Allison, many of us were skeptical about this arrangement. Initially, the personal complications seemed potentially disastrous. Understandable concerns. Yet you've both defied those expectations remarkably." She studied me with the shrewd assessment that had made her a formidable corporate leader. "It takes considerable emotional maturity to transform a failed personal relationship into a successful professional one." Before I could respond, Gerald appeared, requesting Patricia's input on something board-related. She excused herself, leaving me to consider her observation. Had we truly transformed our relationship, or merely created a functional professional facade over unresolved personal issues? The question lingered uncomfortably as I circulated through the remaining conversations. As the evening wound down, team members began departing in small groups. I was gathering my things when Mark approached. "I think that went well," he said, his expression satisfied but restrained. "The team seems energized." "Yes, and the board appears impressed." Patricia mentioned possible increased funding. She told me the same. He hesitated. "Would you like to share a car? We're both heading downtown." The offer was practical, logistically sensible, yet loaded with potential complications. "Thank you, but I've already arranged transportation." Of course. He accepted the boundary without question. The weeks following the team dinner brought accelerated progress. Construction on our dedicated facility advanced ahead of schedule. Research trials expanded with promising results. The board approved additional funding for the European initiative. Our professional partnership continued functioning with surprising effectiveness. The division's development is exceeding all expectations. Gerald enthused during our monthly update. Your joint leadership model is being discussed as a potential template for other divisions. Yet beneath the professional success, I found myself increasingly unsettled by complicated emotions. Working closely with Mark meant daily exposure to his transformed leadership approach. The thoughtful consideration, balanced decision-making, and genuine collaboration I'd longed for during our marriage. Charlotte remained my sounding board during our weekly dinners, though her perspective had subtly shifted. "So, he actually supported your budget revisions?" she asked, seeming genuinely surprised. "Without any passive-aggressive comments about bean counters?" "Not only supported them, but integrated them effectively into the research planning." I pushed my salad around absently. "He's different, Charlotte. Not just professionally polite, but fundamentally changed in how he approaches collaboration." She studied me carefully. "And how does that make you feel?" "Conflicted," I admitted. Part of me appreciates the effective working relationship. Another part feels. I hesitated, struggling to articulate the complex emotion. Angry, she suggested. That he couldn't make these changes when it mattered for your marriage. Yes. And confused. And sometimes I wonder. If things could have been different, I nodded reluctantly. Oh, Allie. Her expression softened with concern. That's a dangerous line of thinking. I know. It's irrational and pointless. I straightened, reaching for professional detachment. The past is past. We have an effective, working relationship now, and that's what matters. Is that all that matters, though? Charlotte's question was gentle but direct. Because you've turned down 3 perfectly nice men I've introduced you to, and I'm starting to wonder if there's a reason beyond being too busy with work. That's not fair. The division launch is demanding. Life is always demanding. That's rarely the real reason people avoid dating after divorce. Her insight hit uncomfortably close to home. Was I using work to avoid moving forward personally? Or worse, was I nurturing some irrational hope regarding Mark? The questions lingered as I threw myself even more intensely into the division development. Our temporary offices had become a hive of activity. Research teams finalizing protocols, administrative staff establishing operational systems, facilities, managers overseeing construction of our permanent space. Mark and I maintained our effective, professional partnership, meeting daily to coordinate activities and address emerging challenges. Throughout, he remained consistently respectful, collaborative, and appropriately distant, never overstepping the personal boundaries we'd established. Then came the Singapore conference invitation, the International Gene Therapy Symposium. Once, us to present our autoimmune protocol. Mark explained, stopping by my office late one afternoon. It's a significant opportunity for visibility with potential research partners and regulatory authorities. When and where? Singapore, 6 weeks from now. He handed me the formal invitation. They're requesting both of us. Scientific methodology, an operational framework as an integrated presentation. I scanned the document. This is a prestigious forum, one of the most important in our field. The European regulatory authorities will be well represented. He hesitated. It would mean traveling together. 5 days, including travel time. The implication hung in the air between us. Our carefully maintained professional boundaries had been supported by physical separation outside working hours. An international trip together would challenge that arrangement significantly. I'll need to check my schedule, I said carefully. Of course. Take your time. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think our joint presentation would make a significant impact. No other research initiative is approaching autoimmune treatment with this integrated scientific operational model. After he left, I studied the invitation more carefully. The symposium truly was a premier event, attended by leading researchers, regulatory officials, and pharmaceutical executives from around the world. Presenting our work there could advance both the research timeline and funding opportunities. Professionally, the decision was obvious. Personally, it felt fraught with complications. I consulted Gerald, hoping for objective perspective. Singapore? Absolutely, you should go, he replied without hesitation. The exposure for Westridge would be invaluable, and frankly, the timing is perfect, with the European trials launching next quarter. I'm concerned about the optics. I ventured carefully. Mark and I traveling internationally together. Gerald waved away my concern. Your division leaders, presenting groundbreaking research. No one will think twice about it. He studied me with sudden perception. unless there's another reason you're hesitant. No, of course not. The denial came too quickly. Just being cautious about any appearance of impropriety. Allison. His tone gentled. You and Mark have established an exemplary professional relationship. The board has complete confidence in your judgment. He smiled. Besides, Helen will be attending as well. You'll hardly be alone together. The knowledge that Helen would also attend offered unexpected relief. In that case, I'll confirm my participation. I informed Mark the next day during our standing morning meeting. I've reviewed my schedule. I can attend the Singapore Symposium. Excellent. His professional satisfaction revealed nothing of personal reaction. Helen's already coordinating logistics. We should begin developing our presentation next week. Agreed. I'll block time on my calendar. The preparation for Singapore provided welcome focus, channeling my conflicted emotions into productive work. Mark and I met regularly to develop our joint presentation, maintaining the balanced approach that had proven successful at the team dinner. 2 weeks before the conference, Helen scheduled a final preparatory meeting in our temporary conference room. She arrived with detailed coordination materials for each of us. Your flight itineraries, she explained, distributing travel folders. You're both in business class, though not seated together. I assumed you'd prefer professional separation. During the long flight, good thinking, I acknowledged, appreciating her sensitivity to our situation. Your hotel confirmations are also included. The symposium venue has limited rooms available, so I've arranged accommodations at the adjacent property. You're on different floors, she added with subtle emphasis. Mark nodded approvingly. Thank you, Helen. Your attention to detail is invaluable. I've also prepared a comprehensive schedule, including mandatory symposium events and optional networking opportunities. She hesitated. I took the liberty of arranging several key meetings with European regulatory officials who've expressed interest in our research. We reviewed the packed itinerary, making minor adjustments and preparing discussion points for the regulatory meetings. Throughout, both Mark and I maintained strictly professional focus, neither acknowledging nor addressing the underlying personal complications of our impending travel. As the departure date approached, my anxiety increased proportionally. Charlotte didn't help matters during our last dinner before the trip. 5 days in Singapore, with your ex-husband. Her expression mixed concern with disbelief. That's either professional dedication or emotional masochism. It's an important symposium, I defended. And Helen will be there as buffer. Helen can't be with you every minute. Charlotte reached for my hand. Allie, I'm worried. You've been different lately when talking about Mark. Less guarded, more wistful. That's ridiculous, is it? You're about to spend 5 days in close proximity with a man you once loved, who now seems to have become the person you always wanted him to be. Her concern was evident. That's emotionally complicated territory. We're professionals presenting research, nothing more. Just be careful. She squeezed my hand. Guard your heart. People don't fundamentally change, even when they genuinely try. Her warning echoed in my mind as I packed for the trip, selecting professional attire that projected appropriate authority while remaining practical for the tropical climate. The careful preparation provided illusion of control over a situation that felt increasingly unpredictable. We departed on a Tuesday evening, meeting briefly at the airline lounge before boarding. Mark arrived precisely on time, looking travel-ready in business, casual attire that managed to appear both comfortable and professional. Ready for 18 hours of flying? He asked, his tone light but careful. As ready as one can be for such an ordeal, I replied. I've loaded my tablet with work documents and sleep aids. Smart. I have research papers and mediocre movies. Shall we? The flight proceeded as Helen had arranged. Separate seats, minimal interaction, professional distance maintained. Yet I found myself uncomfortably aware of Mark's presence several rows ahead, occasionally glimpsing him working on his laptop or conversing with the flight attendant. The symposium registration opens tomorrow morning, Helen informed us during the drive. I've arranged a brief team meeting in my room at 9 to review final presentation materials before the welcome reception at 11. Perfect. Mark nodded, his fatigue evident despite obvious efforts to remain professional. What about the European regulatory meeting? Scheduled for Friday afternoon. After your joint presentation, Helen handed us each a revised itinerary. I've highlighted all. Mandatory events in yellow, optional networking in blue. The luxury hotel impressed even through my travel exhaustion. Soaring atrium, elegant modern design, impeccable service. Check-in was expedited, and within minutes, I was escorted to my room on the 23rd floor. Mark, I noted from Helen's arrangements, was on the 18th. Rest well, Helen advised as we parted in the lobby. The symposium schedule is demanding. My suite was spacious and beautifully appointed, with panoramic views of Singapore's dramatic skyline. Despite the lateness of the hour in Singapore, my body remained on home time, making sleep impossible. I unpacked methodically, reviewed presentation, materials, and finally surrendered to restlessness. The hotel's rooftop garden offered a peaceful refuge. At midnight local time, it was nearly deserted. Just a few other travelers, similarly affected by jet lag. I found a quiet corner overlooking the city lights, breathing in the warm tropical air, scented with frangipani. Couldn't sleep either. I turned to find Mark approaching, still in his travel clothes, but with slightly rumpled appearance, suggesting he'd at least attempted rest. Jet lag, I explained unnecessarily. My body thinks it's noon. Same. He gestured to the empty chair beside me. Mind if I join you? I hesitated briefly before nodding. He settled into the chair, maintaining appropriate distance. Remarkable view, he observed, gazing at the illuminated skyline. It is. We sat in surprisingly comfortable silence. The fatigue and foreign setting creating a strange bubble outside our normal carefully constructed professional boundaries. After several minutes, Mark spoke again. Do you remember that conference in Toronto? Our second year together. The memory surfaced. Unexpectedly, a professional event early in our relationship, when his research was just beginning to gain recognition. You were nervous about your presentation. Terrified, he corrected with a small smile. First international audience. You helped me rehearse in our hotel room until 3 in the morning. You kept stumbling over the methodology section until you suggested I focus on patient impact first, then explain the science. His voice softened with the memory. It changed how I presented research for the rest of my career. I hadn't thought about that night in years. The shared purpose, the genuine partnership, the way we'd celebrated his successful presentation afterward. Before ambition and neglect had corroded our connection, we made a good team then, I acknowledged. Quietly, we make a good team now, he responded, meeting my gaze directly. Different, but effective. The moment balanced precariously between professional acknowledgement and something more personal. I stood, retreating to safer ground. We should try to rest before tomorrow's schedule begins. He nodded, accepting the boundary. Of course. Good night, Alison. The symposium launched the next morning with typical professional intensity. Registration, welcome addresses, preliminary sessions. Our presentation wasn't scheduled until Friday. but the Westridge research had generated significant interest. With numerous attendees approaching us for preliminary discussions throughout the demanding schedule, Mark and I maintained our effective, professional partnership, seamlessly alternating scientific and operational perspectives, presenting unified responses to inquiries, reinforcing each other's key points. Helen managed our schedule with characteristic efficiency, ensuring we maximize strategic connections while maintaining appropriate preparation time. Thursday evening featured a formal networking dinner where we were seated at different tables, Mark with research leaders, me with financial and operational executives. The arrangement provided welcome separation after hours of close professional collaboration. As the dinner concluded, Patricia Reynolds appeared unexpectedly at my side. I hadn't realized she was attending the symposium. Allison, our division leaders are making quite an impression. Her approval was evident. I've received numerous inquiries about potential research partnerships. That's excellent news. The European connections are particularly valuable for our trial expansion. Indeed, she gestured toward the opposite side of the room, where Mark was engaged in animated conversation with several distinguished-looking scientists. He's different, you know, since you returned to Westridge. Her observation lingered with me through the remainder of the evening and into Friday morning, our presentation day. Mark and I met for final preparations over breakfast, reviewing key points and potential questions. "Are you nervous?" he asked, noticing my unusual quietness. "Not about the presentation." The admission slipped out before I could filter it. He studied me with unexpected perception. "Patricia's attendance unsettled you." "Her observations did." I hesitated. "About you, about changes." Understanding dawned in his expression. "Ah, it's not relevant to our professional responsibilities," I added quickly. "Perhaps not." He closed his presentation notes. "But since we're discussing it, she's right. I have changed. Losing you forced me to recognize patterns I'd been blind to for years." The directness of his statement caught me off guard. "Mark, this isn't a declaration or an attempt to revisit the past," he clarified. "Just acknowledgement of truth. Our divorce was painful, but necessary. I wasn't the partner you deserved. We both contributed to the failure." I offered, surprising, myself with the concession, perhaps, but my focused ambition at the expense of connection was the primary factor. He smiled slightly. "The irony is that I'm a better scientist now, more effective, more balanced, because of what I learned from losing you." I didn't know how to respond to his candor. Fortunately, Helen arrived with last-minute schedule adjustments, shifting us back to professional territory. The moment passed, but its impact lingered as we prepared to take the stage. Our presentation was scheduled as a symposium highlight, 90 minutes in the main hall, with broadcast to overflow rooms. As we waited in the wings, I felt Mark's steady presence beside me. Neither too close nor too distant. A balanced partnership. "Ready?" he asked, as the moderator began our introduction. "Ready." We walked onto the stage together, presenting our revolutionary approach to the packed auditorium. Mark outlined the scientific breakthrough with his characteristics, brilliance, while I detailed the innovative operational structure that enabled accelerated development. Throughout, we maintained perfect synchronization, transitioning seamlessly, reinforcing key points, presenting truly integrated leadership. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Questions flowed from scientists, administrators, regulatory officials, all engaged by both the research potential and the organizational model supporting it. We fielded inquiries as a unified team, neither dominating nor deferring inappropriately. That, Helen said afterward, was remarkable. I've never seen a joint presentation flow so naturally. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of follow-up meetings, including the crucial session with European regulatory authorities, who expressed unprecedented enthusiasm for our accelerated trial protocols. By evening, exhaustion mingled with exhilaration as we gathered for the symposium's closing reception. To extraordinary success, Patricia toasted, joining our small group. The board will be thrilled with the regulatory progress. As the reception wound down, Helen excused herself to handle final coordination details for our departure the following day. Patricia followed shortly after, leaving Mark and me momentarily alone. We make a good team, he said, echoing his words from the rooftop garden. I'm grateful for that, whatever else happened between us. The sincerity in his voice registered deeply. So am I. Would you? He hesitated. Would you consider a walk? The gardens by the bay are supposed to be spectacular at night. As colleagues, he added quickly, celebrating professional success, I should have declined, maintained the careful boundaries we'd established. But something, perhaps the success of our presentation, perhaps Patricia's observations, perhaps simply exhaustion lowering my defenses, made me nod. A short walk would be nice. The gardens were indeed spectacular, illuminated trees creating an otherworldly landscape, the famous super trees glowing against the night sky. We strolled in comfortable silence, maintaining appropriate distance, yet sharing the experience in a way that felt unexpectedly natural. I never thanked you properly, Mark said as we paused at a viewing platform overlooking the harbour. For what? For being willing to work with me, despite everything. For giving the research a chance to succeed. The science deserved that chance. Yes. But you could have easily found another financial oversight option that didn't involve daily collaboration with your ex-husband. His smile was self-deprecating. Especially one who celebrated your divorce with champagne. I studied him in the garden's ethereal lighting. Why did you really do that? The toast. Ed deeply. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for asking. He turned slightly, creating professional distance again. We should head back. Early flight tomorrow. As we walked toward the hotel, I found myself considering the journey we'd traveled. From bitter divorce to functional colleagues to something approaching genuine respect. Not a reconciliation, not a rekindling, but perhaps something equally valuable, the transformation of broken history into productive future. Our 6-month review period ends next week, Mark noted as we reached the hotel lobby. The point where you can choose to continue with the division or transition to someone else. I'd almost forgotten that contractual clause, my escape hatch. If the professional arrangement proved too complicated personally, I'm not planning to leave, I assured him. The division is thriving under our joint leadership. Relief flickered across his face. I'm glad. I can't imagine doing this with anyone else. We reached the elevators, the moment of parting slightly, awkward after the evening's unusual openness. Good night, Mark. Good night, Allison. He hesitated briefly. And thank you. For Singapore, for the division, for, he seemed to search for the right words, for showing me what balanced partnership actually means. As the elevator carried me upward, I realized Charlotte had been both right and wrong. People rarely change fundamentally, but occasionally, profound loss creates capacity for genuine transformation. In Mark's case, losing our marriage had catalyzed the balanced perspective I'd always hoped he would develop. Not for reconciliation, not for second chances, but for growth itself. And perhaps that was the most meaningful outcome possible from our shared history. Two people who had failed at marriage, succeeding at transformation, creating something valuable from the ashes of what was lost.